Hey guys, Logan here, and like I said in my last video, which was my top 10 best movies of 2017 video, I figured I would unveil my first ever worst list video, specifically my top 10 worst movies of 2017. And since 2017 is coming to a close and I've seen plenty amount of bad movies to make this list, I decided to wear this red shirt just to represent these movies. I hope you like it. Now, I want to give in one disclaimer here, like I did in my top 10 best movies of 2017 video. These are just the movies that I personally cannot stand watching, or in other words, hate it. You might like some of these movies, and that's fine. More power to you if you like some of these movies. It's just for me, I can never really see myself watching these movies again, and I ask myself why these movies were made, and why they need to be put into theaters and all that other stuff. You know what I'm saying, right? Anyway, now before I get into my number 10th pick, I do have a few honorable, or in this case, dishonorable mentions. These were the movies that were awful, just really bad movies, but didn't quite make my list, and they are as follows: Triple X Return of Xander Cage, Rings, The Great Wall, The Lost City of Zed, Pirates of the Caribbean 5, Dead Man Tell No Tales, and Transformers The Last Night. Let's get into this, my top 10 least favorite movies of 2017. Starting off with I'm a huge fan of Tom Hanks. He's one of my top 3 favorite actors of all time, and I really like Emma Watson. She's a legitimately good actress. She proved that with all the Harry Potter films and this year's live-action Disney film, Beauty and the Beast. But in this film, she delivered one of the most wooden performances in the entire film, and that's not the only issue I have with The Circle. There were so many expositional dialogue scenes that could have been cut out of the movie. You know, characters talking about what The Circle is, what it's about, and what it represents, and all that other stuff. The editing was really bad, and the ending was also a big letdown. The Circle is by far one of the most dullest movies I have seen all year. I love action movies, I really do. I believe making an action movie would work, and people like myself might enjoy watching a fun and entertaining action film. But when you watch Collide, it almost feels like a movie that has a hard time trying to be one of two things. Be a romance film or be an action film, especially in the first half of the movie. Because in the first half, you get almost nothing but Nicholas Hoult and Felicity Jones romantically flirt with each other, have fun, and travel while nothing really happens. Collide was a fine example of how you shouldn't make an action movie when you put little to no effort into it. And the actors in this film were completely wasted in this film, and they are better than what they have got served in this film. Just stuff like that. Collide was awful. Ghost in the Shell was one of the most underwhelming films I've sat through in this entire year. The action sequences were handled in a way that was not thrilling, the characters were very bland, and none of the performances were that good, especially from Scarlett Johansson as Major, which was such a huge disappointment. The script was bad, the direction was mediocre, the story was so all over the place, and the main villains were the horrific downfall of this movie. Now, I didn't watch any of the original Ghost in the Shell films from like in the 90s or 80s or something like that, and I don't know, maybe they're better than this film, but for now, this was one of the worst anime adaptations I have seen in my life. Chips was hands down the worst comedy film I have seen in 2017. It stars Michael Pena, who I thought was really good in Ant-Man, and Dax Shepard, who I thought was one of the main reasons why this movie was so unforgivably unfunny. It didn't just suck as a comedy movie, it sucked as a movie in general. And that's what's sad about it. Dax Shepard and Michael Pena had a complete lack of chemistry. They did almost nothing that stood out, and all the jokes fell flat. A comedy movie's number one purpose to exist is to make you laugh. Chips didn't make me laugh, which is why it's one of the biggest comedy flops I have ever seen. Flatliners. Seriously? Like, really, why was this movie even made? This was the most boring film I've sat through in the theaters in this entire year of 2017. It had Ellen Page's character who dies halfway through the film, which was such a huge letdown. It had Kiefer Sutherland who was being shoehorned into this movie. And characters you don't feel attached to and don't fear for them in situations they were in. And jump scares that were horribly ineffective. Flatliners had a potential to be good, but instead it completely wasted that potential and turned itself into a complete pile of dog crap. Flatliners was one of the most boring films I have ever seen. Unforgettable. Well, actually, yeah, it was unforgettable. In the worst ways possible, of course. Rosario Dawson is a pretty good actress. I like her. Her performance was better than this movie has to offer, and Katherine Heigl gave out one of the most hilariously cartoonish performances I have seen in any film. She played a jealous ex who tends to make life a living hell for her ex's new fiance, and all that other stuff, and just, yeah, it was... with some serious moments that were actually hilarious, characters you don't give a S about, a story that was boring and uninteresting, and a jaw-dropping ending to a horrible setup for a sequel. Unforgettable was the kind of movie that should have been put on the Lifetime channel and nowhere else, and just stay there. Or, on the other hand, shouldn't have been made into a movie. Similar to Chips being my least favorite comedy film of the year, The Bye-Bye Man is for sure my least favorite horror film of the year. It's a film where some annoying and moronic characters make some of the dumbest decisions imaginable. Just don't say or think of the words The Bye-Bye Man is all they had to do, and they really didn't listen. Because that's what people in my generation are doing and want to do. A lot lately, huh? Yeah. And the terribly CGI dog that looked like it was made out of a burned meat, and many subplots that don't make any sense and don't really add to this movie's story. The concept is pretty good, but at the end of the day, it was horribly executed, and that's one of the major cons of The Bye-Bye Man. Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and starring his wife Milla Jovovich, at the conclusion of the Resident Evil movie franchise. Hopefully it is, because this movie was terrible. The editing was the worst in a film I have seen in my entire life. You really could not see what was actually happening during the action sequences, because there were so many jump cuts that were taken at each and every single half of a second, and all that other stuff, and at different angles, not to mention. None of the characters were fleshed out, none of the action was worth seeing, and none of the motivations were given very strongly. The CGI looked atrocious, the acting was absolutely awful, and the script was even worse, and the direction was even worse. 50 Shades Darker, starring Dakota Johnson as a woman who lets a businessman, played by Jamie Dornan, enter her life after he overpowered her with BDSM in the first 50 Shades of Grey movie. Well, that's all you need to know right there. Whenever this movie tries to be serious, it was absolutely hilarious. And whenever it tried to be sexy, it was dreadfully boring. The dialogue was so cheesy, it's hard to watch. And the romance between Anastasia Steele and Christian Grey was the most forced romance I have seen in any film, no matter what type of genre it is. It was so cringeworthy and so awkward. I hated it. It was a straight A garbage movie to watch. But it was terrible in a somewhat entertaining way compared to the movie at the #1 spot on this list. Speaking of which, we are here, guys. My #1 most hated film of 2017. The one film that I dedicated an entire 10-minute, 21-second long video ranting on why this movie failed, why this movie was terrible, why I hated this movie so much, and why I can never, ever, in a million years, imagine myself watching it again. And that movie is... The Mummy. Now you might be wondering to yourself, really, Logan? You put The Mummy above the other 9 terrible films on this list? I'm really curious as to why that is. Well, let me explain, just for a minute. Tom Cruise was miscast and became an inferior version of Brendan Fraser. Russell Crowe was disappointing to watch as heck, and Annabelle Wallis's character was the most pointless character throughout the entire film. She had no purpose for being in this film. None. Just zero. Just none. And Jake Johnson's character was the worst comic movie relief I have ever seen in my entire life. I'm not exaggerating. What's even sad is that he's probably more annoying to watch than Jar Jar Binks. I can't believe I'm actually saying that. And let's talk about Sophia Boutella as the Mummy. Oh my god. Okay. So let's focus here. Besides the characters and the casting choices, the story was garbage, the screenplay was stupid and repetitive, the writing was awful, and the direction was downright mediocre, and the dialogue was very stale and just not really good. And the character development was incredibly non-existent, to the point where I don't even care about any of the characters in this movie. None. None. Just incredibly non-existent. But the biggest reason of all for why I hate this movie so much, and why it's the worst film of 2017 for me, and why it's the worst film I have ever seen, yes, even worse than 2003's Hulk, which was formerly my least favorite film of all time until this film came out, is because it completely rebooted the Mummy franchise for the worst. It completely butchered everything that is good about the Mummy trilogy from the early 2000s. It took away everything that is good about it. There were many things this movie did that really offended someone like myself, who was a huge fan of the Mummy trilogy from the 2000s, and just stuff like that. It just... Thank you, Alex Kurtzman, for ruining my childhood. You made the worst abomination I have ever seen, ever. You should have been fired immediately after this movie came out in theaters. The day after this movie came out in theaters. You should have been fired after that. You should be ashamed of yourself for doing this film. Ashamed. And for trying to make this film as a setup for the Dark Universe, which I never care for anymore after watching this film. I'm not looking forward to, I think it will be Bride of Frankenstein, the next installment of the Dark Universe. I really don't know, and I really don't care. Freak the Dark Universe, freak Universal Studios, and last, but certainly not least, freak you, Alex Kurtzman. Freak you. And the worst part about this is, when I watched this movie in theaters when it came out, the only thing that it gave me was nothing but pain. Nothing but pain. And just and just, yeah, that is the only word. Just, it gave me nothing but pain after watching this movie in theaters. And just, go watch my video, Why the Mummy 2017 Failed. It will clearly demonstrate just how I really feel about The Mummy 2017. You will fully understand why I hate this movie so much with a passion, and why it's the worst film of 2017, and also the worst film I've ever seen. My new worst film of all time, and all that stuff. It's the one film that should never have existed. Okay, I'm done talking about the worst movies of 2017. Stay tuned here on my channel, because I'm going to be doing another top 10 list video, which is going to be my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2018. Yeah, that's right, talking about movies that I am most excited or anticipating to see in the year 2018. And all that other stuff. I'm just excited to do that video. If you guys enjoyed this video and you agree with my list, please click the like button, and let me know in the comment section below, what are your top 10 worst movies of 2017, or what is your least favorite film of 2017? If you enjoy what you've seen here and you want to see future videos from me, please click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you never miss a video. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great week, or I guess you could say last day of 2017, Battle Squad. Have a great week. Happy New Year's Eve. And as always, fight the good fight. Peace!